Plato said in his book The Republic that the country may never be happy until the king becomes a philo-travel or become a philo-travel king. It is said that Marcus and Aurelius were very much liked to quote this thing of Plato, and those who have written about them may not often stop themselves by applying it to Marcus. And if we're looking for a Plato's journey king as a real look, there's no better than Marcus, the author of this book, which was the king of Roman Epire for about 20 years and immortal meditates. But this title Marx does not exact themselves. He never considered himself a journey. He was just an upright student and a follower from an incomplete who tried to follow others' created philosophy. And the king was also an accident for them. When Marcus Annius Verus was born in AD 121, people could probably think that it would go up to a good position in the Senate or imperial administration. But one could not think that it would become emperor in the future. Or there will be a man alone sitting on the horse with that bronze, the hands of which today also gravitates people even after 2,000 years on the Capitolian Hill of Rome. Marcus was from a good and responsive family. His grandfathers were made the consul for the second time years of their birth, which was the largest position of theoretically Rome. But there was a lot of ceremonial, and they also followed the nutrition of their grandfather as their sinners had gone into their childhood. Marx and Meditations have referring to the character of their sin, either as much as they remembered or heard from others. But his knowledge will come through a lot of stories and not from his memories. We don't know much about their childhood and early teenage. The little one who has got is met with meditation. His biography written in Historia Augusta that is a strange and unreliable book. Perhaps some lost life of Marius Max is based on the ruse. This historian Augusta says Marcus was a serious child, but they also liked boxing, wrestling, running, and falconry, and were also good ball players and were fond of hunting. It's all quite common things for an upper-class boy. The first chapter of the Meditations gives some glimpse of the school life of Marcus, and the rest of the image from general knowledge about the upper-middle-class education of that time. His first teachers, such as Meditation Book 1 section, is referring to the unnamed teacher in 5. Perhaps the slaves were, through which they have learned the basic things of reading and writing. After them they have been sent to the private tutors, where they have read the literature, especially the epic and of the Virgil. But the literature was just a preprint. The real goal was rhetoric. It was a must of skill for an active political career in the time of the Republic, like under the Empire. Under Marcus, a trend worker has started with the first small exercise and then the full-scale practice declamping in which they have to defend a side of an imagery law case. Or any historical figure has to be administered on an important moment. Should the Caesar cross Rubicon? Should the Alexander stop on the Indus? Why? This training takes place in Latin as well as Greek. Already the Roman upper-class bilingual had become from the century BC. And speaking the Greek of Marcus and writing was as fluent as a 19th-century Russian aristocrat's French or a Han Japanese courtier's Chinese. Marcus has read the Homer's Iliad and the tragedies of the OC Europe Discus as well as the and the spikes of the large Athenian order like Demosthenes will be read the same seriously as the spikes of the Cicero. The intellectual elite mostly in capital was the Greek writers and artists. And when Marcus spoke to his court physician Galen, he was also in Greek. The language of the most philosophy was Greek. Writers like late Republic and early Epire's time P. Lucadius, Cicero, and Seneca tried to write philosophy in Latin. And they were very powerful. But Plato, Aristotle, Theophrastus, Zeno, Chrysippus, Epicurus all were Greek. To read the serious philosophy, it was necessary to understand his language and his created vocabulary. So writing Marcus's own Meditations in Greek was absolutely natural. In 137, the year 137, when Marcus was 16 years old, a lot of importance talked about. There were no children of the Emperor Hadrian of that time. He was almost close to death due to a disease last year, and all it seemed that it would not be much days. Hadrian had a chance to become a king as his first ever aper treason who was his distant relatives. He endoped them. Hadrian, following the Trencen's exam, had made a famous aristocrat Lucius Sinius Commodus his coaxer. But in 137 Sionius suddenly died and Hadrian had to choose a new saxer. He chose Senator Antoninus, who had no children, but with a condition. The condition was that Antoninus Marcus, who was his relative and son of Sionius Lucius Verus, who was only 7 years old at that time. Then Marcus took the head of his adopted father and became Marcus Aurelius Antoninus. Hadrian died next year. Marcus' throne became the first candidate. Now their education and small heroes' education became even more accessible. And it seems that no stone was left. A very rich Athenian rhetorician from Herodes Atticus, trained by Greek rhetori who had a fairly drama-filled relationship with their family people and courts such as a sleeping opera. The Latin oratory he learned from Marcus Cornelius Fronto, which was a famous rhetorician of North Africa's Cirta. Variety was the game that quite a lot of letters from the Fronto are yet left to the name of Marx and sees the close bond between students and teachers. The letters also show that Fronto was a little sad that Marcus was getting away from the rhetoric and going deeper into the philosophy. In the first book of Meditations, Marcus has referring to the fellows with whom he learned the formally or informally and think he would have read or heard from many others. Marcus will have learned a lot even outside the classroom. There was an informal apprenticeship for legal and political training, in which young aristocrates had to work with large public figures. As Junius Rustics, the influence Marcus wrote in 1.7i from the book one section, but the biggest influence was their non-adoptive father Antoninus Emulsion. Marcus has seen how Antoninus met Ambency. Legal issues were heard and dictate letters to their officers, as well as the status of becoming the heir of Marcus was also being shown in different ways. 140 in the age of just 19 and in the age of 145. In the same year he married Antoninus's daughter Fatina, which he has done in Meditations 1.17. The Yule of Antoninus in the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire of Edward Gibbon has been disassembled. It has very little material for the history, because the history records most of the human being's crimes, uncontrollable and unhappy work. For the biography of Marcus, there was nothing in that period. We discover much less about Marcus's activity in the 1.5 decades between 145 to 161. And what's going on inside them makes sense only with their fists done with Fronto. But the two things that had to define their lives ahead were the court and the philosophy. On 31 August 161 Antoninus died and Marcus became a lone saxar. Marx took action immediately and maybe even completed the original plan of the Herdian that Antoninus had ignored and left his adopted brother Lucius Verus to be a ruler. The character of Verus has always been shown weaker in comparison with Marcus. Historia Augusta, full of old sources specialty gossip, shows him an austere and fallen man. About one and Nero-like. Maybe it's not right. Marcus said nothing about them in Meditation. But that's why Marcus was the only senior aperer, whether the name is not, and it's not even energizing. Marcus was about 10 years old from Verus and Antoninus himself had trained him for this role. How did this philo-travel king come out? Perhaps not as different as people were thinking. Aper had the entire power, but in fact he had a considerable authority to control the policies. There much time goes to handle the rewards that had reached the lower level above, as receiving the embassy from the large city of Ampere, listening to the appeals of the criminal cases, answering the questions of the provincial governors and looking at the teachings of the individual people. The system of imperial couriers was okay, but the news took weeks to reach the center from the corner of the empire, and the orders of Aper also took time to reach the bottom. The decision of the Aper received the status of the law, but it was done in the hand of the mostly provincial governors. and their hard work could sometimes lead to their incompetence, compassion, or the desire to not offend locality. Sometimes we see the daily work of Marcus through imperial diseases that have survived in letters, institutions, and legal courts. The lost survivors see that he was interested in freeing the slaves, and also in the guardianship rules of orphans. Some say that the philosophy of rule Marx with slaves was inspired, and with the orphans to the experience of the elders of the father without their own. But it's not clear so far that it was the policies of Marcus's own ideas or as his first emperor Antoninus. Perhaps the most interesting thing is that in the words of Marcus's documents, his personality appears in which every detail has a focus and a conceit showing the use of words that seem different from their first aperture. These things can also be applied from the writer of Meditation and the student of Fronto, whose letters have been greatly emphasized on finding perfect word. Marcus had a priority to creating good relationships with Senate. The goal was that the emperor's absolute power is slightly disguised. An image is created and sometimes even true in which the consonance and cooperation appear. Aristocrat, 100 years ago, thought the Republic would come back and wanted something really. But until the 2nd century, everyone was cleared that there is no option in addition to the principle. Senate wanted to be responsive in his public and his influence from behind. Good apertures play this game happily. Marx had been following the footsteps of Antoninus and treason when stranging the relationship with upper classes and not Hadrian's. The results of which the relationship with the Senate were quite a little tones, and because of the fact that the image of Marx remains of an underlying and sensible ruler. As long as the aperture is alive, he can do anything from his merger. But last word is the same of historians who were from Senate. Ceasus Dio of the post-generation of Cornelius, Testus or Marcus, such as another area where Marcus's policy was the same as their first ones. He was a short and strange act against the Christians called Christians. In the next century, this people were going to become a bigger problem for the emperor. But in Marcus's time, it became so noticeable that a human salesman wrote a long writing against them, some of which are still saved. Intellectual people who were also aware of these. They hate these people. Marcus's teacher Fronto was hardly thought, and the common people and administrators were afraid of these either or did not like them. People also hate these Christians because they did not consider the gods in their name as the society was moving. He had become a denier for the people around them and himself, in addition to his God. And when it did not consider emperor to be a divine, he also became a threat for social order and state stability. The Christianity was illegal from early 2nd centenary when Pliny the Younger, who was the governor of that time Bithynia. In Asia Minor he asked a question from the emperor treason, after which the treason made an official rule. No need to find Christians. But if someone is a Christian, he is killed. But the exhaustive performance of the Christians in the entire empire started significantly later. The 2nd century had the largest threat local provincial governors for them who either took action in the pressure of his merger or local public. Let's take 170 in the city of Lyons, in which the Greek-speaking Christians were over the almost. Marcus's teacher Junius Rusticus also tried the Christians to the court and then carried out the exam. Justin Martyr also had these. When it was a city perfect. Marx also knew about Christianity. But don't think this topic took much space in their minds. In a section 11.3 of the Meditations that the direct mention of the Christianity is probably the later added part. And the indirect hints that seem to be some scalars is probably the fact. Marcus had more serious problems anyway. From this small troublesome cult. As soon as he became the emperor, the relationship suddenly was deteriorated between the Parthian emperor of Rome and his Eclot rival East. Both of the emperors from the time of the treason were locked in a cold war. Everybody who had become a military war. When Antoninus Murray and the new inexperienced rulers came to the throne, the Parthian king Velocius III probably wanted to take advantage of this chance. In 162, his Sixers took Armenia Occupi and delivered a Roman army who went to help. Syria also came to Denzer. There was something to do with Rome. The former was sent to the Verses, who was the small Eber, where he lived for the next 4 years. Now Marcus had no military experience as Antoninus's role was smooth. Hence, war's executive work professional generals handled. In starting the problems but later the Romans lowered and forced the Pommians to peace in the lead of people like young commander Avidius Cassius. Parthia was still threatened, but for some time she could be handled with diplomacy. But Verses and Marx did not have time to make their winnings. Inside a year, the Epir came into a dizziness of a terrible plague that probably brought from the Salzars east of Lucius. Probably his effect was not so anoptic as the latter wrote by the writers. But the people were killed by many dead and the rest of the second major problem. This was the problem rising instability on the second side north border of the Epir. From the Berberian people of Germany, Eastern Europe and Scandinavia where Rome was facing. This time was in pressure from many tribes north and so he was crossing the border of Rome to find the place of living rather than for the conquest. Rome never performs their resistance. But the lack of a proprietor plan has finally taken up the Western Empire to fall after 3 centuries. In some place, the border was marked by the line. Adrian's built wall that was made in the UK. The most distant frontier of Ampere was to secure. Another wall of Antoninus was created in a little more north. But the mainland was hard to make such walls in Europe and there was also the most denier on. Rome still remembered the treasury of AD 9, when General Verses and his 3 legions entered the forests of Germany and never returned. The second was the area of the most tension in century, a little south which was part of today's Romania and around Hungary. Disease area Trajan had won 2 generations first. For a while, the problem was far away, but the risk was still. 3 tribes had become the biggest stigma in Marcus's time. Quist, Marcomanni and Jagebas or Sarmatians. North border was weakened due to the 3 Roman risen sent to Parthia. And barbarians took advantage of this chance. Marx and Verses in 168 faced North March. The rest was quite part of Marcus's role in small battles. Earlier in Marcomannic Wars of 170 and then in another campaign at the end of the same decade and this time the almost was above the entire burden Marcus as the vein suddenly died in the starting of 169, probably from the stroke. The war was completely different from the camp of the first verse. Worked against military and diplomatic tricks partisans. That's not too powerful. This time Romans had to separate negotiate from every single small tribal leader, those who had their own limited power and who could never be trusted. When the conversation fails, one had to fight short blood fats. There was no big open war. The record of this entire campaign is on a column created in Rome that recalls the end of the Marcomannic Wars. The sins made on this monument created to show the victory just look brutal fighting, wasting and examining. Marx boasts of the spider flies written man to rabbits, fish, pigs, bears, sardiners. The starting scene of the Meditations 8.34 that can be cut hands or a sliced part of the foot or sir are inspired from the own expiries of Marcus. The Romans seemed to be up to 175 are winning. But then a shocking news came. Avidius Cassius, who was glowing as general in the Parthian War and now became the governor of Syria and became the almost ruler of East Epir. He left and delivered himself Emperor. Some of the East were laurels with Cappadocia Marcus like Provence. But the rest of the whole East specialty was adhering to the eyes of Cassius. Grain supply was a very instant for capital. Civil war was fixed the almost. But Caesar killed his own man. That's why the war goes. Yet Marcus had to go east to show its control. He also went with him who died during this procession. Marcus visited the east major cities such as Antioch and Alexandria and reached the finale Athens where he became part of the Egyptian mistress. It was a secret reliability ceremony that was dedicated to the gods of the Demeter agriculture. Now Marcus was over 50 and his health was down. Cassius's Bhagava showed that it's important to build a succession plan. Fatina had borne at least 13 children, most of which died at younger ages. Just a son of Marcus was saved until the middle of 170. Commodus, which was only entering its teens. There was no rejuvenation to follow the rule of adoption like the first emperors of Marcus, and not to think that he thought it. In the next few years, Commodus received a fast-track promotion and he became the almost equivalent of emperor. At the age of 15 years in 177 he made the consular. In the same year he caught all the big powers of Empire. Just left the post of Pontifex Maximus, which was just near the ruling emperor, and lived for lifetime. Marcomannic War won't take much late, and both Marcus and Commodus in 178 remarch. 2 years later Marcus died at the age of 58. Marcus was the first emperor after Vespasian who threw his son. Sadly, Commodus did not meet the expectations that Marcus had seen in it. The name of Commodus was remembered as a deteriorated Trent, a second Caligula or Nero whose flaws became more highlight in the contrast of the noble image of his father. After a 12-year-old Yule of Commodus, he was killed, after which a power struggle was started in the Epira which disturbed the Epira for the next 100 years. The time to write Meditations is considered around the age of 170, i.e., last dict of Marcus's life. There is no doubt that this time was dark and stressful for them. In 10 years between 169 to 179, he constantly flew battles on the border. Cassius's failed Buget saw the death of Versa, his wife Fatina, and many more. Perhaps they won't have expected that after their death the entire century will be filled with turmoil. But they have understood so much that their son Commodus is not a man as he thought. In such a time, it was absolutely natural to find Suquin in the philosophy of Marcus. But Marcus needs to go into a little background to understand what he wants from his philosophy. To understand the Meditations in the right context, we just have the Stoicism on which this whole work is based. Not only will it be to understand what is the role of philosophy in old deposits. In today's time, philosophy is an academic subject that only professionals take the philosophers seriously. We keep a philosophy of our lives. Perhaps they don't have to take more of the university's philosophy department. The 20th century's analytic philosophy seems to be quite far from the problem called the American philosopher Thomas Nagel moral question. Just as taking ethical diseases, creating a fair society, understanding how to understand suffering and loss and face death. Many of us today understand these values from the area of release, not of philosophy. But the synchronization was completely different for the people of Marcus and their time. The old philosophy also had the ascenic side. Athens and even larger cities had public funding from philosophy's teachers. And the professional philosophers read in the same way, urge and write as they do today. There was also another side of philosophy on. A practical side. It was not just a thing to read and debate, but a life design. A system that tells how life should live. It was not complete with the need and release, as the release was just focusing on the reals. And there was no moral or ethical rules. And there was no hope to anyone. This work was of philosophy. Today's philosophy's idea mostly began by a man. The 5th century BC. Athens Thyankar Socrates, i.e., Socrates. But philosophy went to another level in Hellenistic period, where philosophical texts are created that gave the proper belief system. The whole life of the rubles that a man could fully adopt. The most important Romans in these Hellenistic systems, and was also the Stoic school for Marcus. This movement was named from Stoa Iea Portico, where its founder Gino 332 or 33 to 262 BC in Athens gave his knowledge. Gino's ideas were pushed by his successor Cleanthes 331 to 232 BC and Chrysippus 280 to 206 BC. Christ wrote so much and he rated the base of systemic Stoicism. This early academic Stoicism is the source from which some of the keywords and concepts that have repeatedly come to the Meditations. And it is necessary to understand the basic idea of this whole system to understand the view of Marcus. Stoic is the most important in thinking that the main ideas are. It is the strong belief that the world is made in a rational and properly ranged manner. The whole world is under the control of a force called Stoics logos. People come with English's words logic and logic. Meaning of this word is so large that it is difficult to translate the effect. In Sanskrit there is a word around it. Perhaps they can use. This means the connected rational thought at the basic level, either as an ability, i.e., the power of thinking, or the rigid sense of that ability created dialogue or idea. People's works also in the individual and throughout the universe. It occurs inside the human being, in the form of regeneration, and at the cosmic level, it is a rational principle that runs the system of the universe. In this sense, people can also be called nature, providence, or God. When John's Gospel of the Bible was written, in that word was I with the people's God, and he was God. So it is taken from Stoic idea. Every event is through decide of people, and in a chain that does not have a break of cause and effects. Stoicism is a deterministic system from the start itself, i.e., everything is already decided. No free will, and it seems that humans have no free will and no moral responsibility. But the Stoics didn't want to accept this. So they made free will a definite that human beings suck themselves the same. He was a famous exam. Human beings like a dog that is tied to a moving cart. If the cutter goes along the part, then the cart will take it aside. But choice is her escape or snatch. Similarly, humans are responsible for their choices and units. Whether people have disassembled them already. It is also part of the whole system if an action seems wrong or immoral. The final result is hormonal and good. He also happens in the control of the people. But people are not just an invisible power that drives the world. It is also a real substance that is present everywhere. Metaphor, not like a single thing like oxygen or carbon. It is a physical form, pneuma. One thing that old Stoics thought as pure fire, and Christs called it fire and air makes. Pneuma is a power living broth that makes humans and animals alive. As Dylan Thomas said, the force through the green fuse drives the flower. It also happens in lifeless things like pneuma, stone and metal. Gives them shape and unity. The internal energy that makes stone, 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 stone. Every object is a lifeless matter and a mix of a living force. They mean both elements when Marcus Cos and materials speak, an inert matter and acting nema who live together until he exists the object. When the object is destroyed, the pneuma gets back to the peoples and absorb. The process of destruction and reintegration is getting every moment with every object, and also happens with the entire universe on a large scale. When sometimes the whole world is destroyed in the fire, it is called apirosis, and again becomes again. If the world is real orderly and people control everything, the proof of that order should be seen in every part of the world. The same thinking forced the staff to think on the nature of the physical world and forced them to find the being rationality even in the structure of the logic and language. Many places in the meditations of Marcus are also an interest of etymology, i.e., words. This systemic thinking he also put in the subjects. The list of the work of Chrysippus, Dragonis Laertius, is quite long. There are not just philosophies but also works like On How to Read Poetry and August the Touching Up of Paintings. The latter Stoics worked in history, anthropology, and even subjects. Not just staying limited to philosophy. The dispersion of Stoic thinking was not limited to just thinking or idea but also spreading place. This movement was started in Athens. Over 150 years after Christ's death, it reached everywhere, especially up to Rome. 2nd century BC's Romans were in the midst of that time conquest, and by the end of century he was controlling the entire Mediterranean. Where there is a conquest, there is a culture. When poet Horace saw that Roman aristocrats have been adapting the Greek culture from 200 BC to their time, he said that the victorious Greece turned out to be the real win. Greece's influence looks the most clearer in the philosophy. Greek philologues like Panidius 185 to 119 BC and Posidonius 135 to 50 BC Rome give lectures. Many people stay there for a long time. At 1st century BC it became fashion that rich Roman youth read at Athens. As the grand tour of 18th century, Roman aristocrats supported the Philo travels and created libraries of large philosophy books. As in the Villa of the Hercules in the Papyri, the Romans such as Cicero and Lucretius also tried to understand the Greek philosophy in Latin. Stoicism made the most popular in the largest schools of philosophy. Stoics were always supported in public life in the conference of the rest of Cacts, and it was very much liked the thinking Roman upper class. Politics and military service were quite important in their value. Stoicism was sometimes also called the real releasing of upper-class Romans. And it is not wrong to say, this process changes the form of Stoicism, much different from the original version with Gino and Chrysippus. The most important change was that the focus became narrow. Early and middle Stoicism was a pure system that covers every kind of knowledge and was quite the therapeutic and abstrain. But the Roman Stoicism became a practical system, not a formal system of thinking but a way to live. This Roman-style Stoicism was influencing the subsequent deposits due to historical resonance. For those who use the Stoic word today, who live strong in difficult times, he has come from most Roman values and not from the original Greek visit. People in later Stoicism were inspired not just from the book but from real humans. The most of its famous followers were one of Marcus Cato the Younger to look different from your great-grandfather. When Julius Caesar marched on Rome in 49 BC, Cato was an honest and strict sanitary. He gave along the rival pomp of the Caesar as he supported the legal government. When he understood that the Caesar will win, Cato decided that she would not see after the Republic, and after the Battle of Munda in 46 BC she swelled. Cato's Stoic resistance became the symbol inside the century. Nero's time his poet Lucan made immortalize, and Senator Thrasea Pettus wrote a Prague field biography over him whose result was that Nero also killed Thrasea. Thrasea's herpes Haladius Priscus was also uncovered and his end was in the rowel of the Vespasian. Thrasea and Haladius became the role model for the rich people of 2nd century such as Marcus's mentors Rusticus, Maximus, and Severus. Marcus has also responsive all of these in Medits 1.14 and Cato. There were people with Cato, Thrasea, and Haladius action, not writing. Their image looks a bit simple and flat due to their gender bravery. There were more complexes and interesting humans. The uncle of poet Lucan's Lucius Annius Seneca, 4 AD 65 from BC, called usually Seneca the Younger so that his famous is not fed by the father. First he was young Nero's advisor, but later he was forced to suicide him in a sway of being involved in a federal coup. Every person's life doesn't match with their ideals, and it was difficult to understand some critics. Someone said how was so rich and how Nero did so compliments while his philosophy said something else. Yet his written work specialty letters to Lucilius later became the most engaging and ignoring version of Stoicism as he was written in Latin. So their effects were too much on subsequent masses. But not all Stoic-rich senators. There was also another type of Stoic outsider whose simple and tidy lifestyle gave him a responsive to rich people and because of which he could openly criticize the upper-class society. Similarly, early example was the Singus Musonius Rufus 30-100 who was of the knight i.e. equestrian class in Roman administration, and both Nero and Vespasian had sent Ezel. Even more powerful exams were Musonius's student Epictetus, who started the practice of philosophy as a slave and put all his life in the same when they were free. He was sent to Nicopolis in the rowel of the Domitian i.e. Northern Greece in Greece, and when Trojan's death he kissed to stay there where he taught and taught people. even those visitors who had learnt from a distance. One of them was an upper-class historian and leader Arian 86 to 160 who wrote a detailed record of the lectures of the Epictetus that today we know in the name of the Discourses of Epictetus. Later they also created a short version named Nicauridion. This means manual or handbook. There were specialty important figures for Epictetus Marcus. Marcus has slammed his philosophy teacher Rusticus, so he met him from the lecture of Epictetus, perhaps discourses or any private lectures notes. Book 11 of Meditations also offers considerable quotes and paraphrases of Epictetus. Arrian's small Enchiridion book is not only a context of meditations. Both have a short and different entry format. The light Stoicism of the Epictetus was a fairly simple version of the old Hellenistic Stoicism, a philosophy that learned a lot from his competitor and almost forgot some of his own parts. Both of the things that come to the nature of the subject and take ideas from non-Stoic sources also appear to be clear in Meditations. Christ and his followers had diverted knowledge into three parts: logic, physics, and ethics. Logic means the nature of knowledge. Physics means the structure of the physical world, and the ethics. What is the role of the human being in that world? Marx took the name of this three-part system, but the rest of the Meditations is clear that the logic and physics were not their focus. In a place, he thinks of the gods that he did not trapped in the small quarrels of the logic and not much confused in the physics. 1.17 in. Sometimes some entries show the link to the language and the Stoic thought, as in the wordplay of 8.57 i.e. book at section 57, but its rear. Many times the logic of Marcus seems weak. It is not a logic, but a speaker or a writer. Like 4.4 finds a proper logic Chan, but it's uncommon. His interest in the physical world is only when it is associated with human life. After a time of the entire universe, like a basic idea of Stoicism, having destroyed in the fire, Marx remained quite neutral, and they were not alone. The real base of the system for them was ethics. Just because you can't become a great thinker or a scientist, it doesn't mean that you'll be freedom, stay humble, and help others. 7.67 wrote in. The questions of meditations are mostly metaphysical and ethical. Why are we here? How should we live our lives? How are we doing the right thing? How do we avoid our daily stress? How to deal with pain, and how to live when we know that we are not a day. The answer to these questions will also be useless and wrong, because the real impact of meditation is in addressing these things from Marx's clear and strong way. But paying attention to a thought pattern will be utilitarian, which is at the center of the Meditations and also of the Epictetus that the philo-travel Pierre Adam had cleared. It was the idea of three disciplines. Discipline of perception, action, and will. The discipline of perception says we should keep our thinking absolutely objective. You can see things like it without it. To understand this point, it is necessary to understand the Stoic theory of knowledge a little. As we saw, the entire universe first runs through the peoples. This people work through Hesmenikon inside us. This means that leads. This is part of our thinking power. It can also mean will or character in different drawings. This is the same thing that is sometimes equal to the work of brain and sometimes heart in English. It has a main job to understand and judge the information from our senses. Things hit us all the time. Things, events. We get a fantasy, a mental impression. Then mind makes him a perfection. A photo like a hypoellipsis creates an image from negative. The image should be exactly like original, but this does not happen every time. Sometimes she is blurred or has a shadow that distorts the real image. The most common distortion occurs in the wrong value adjustment. Give a good or bad thing. When he is really good, he is not bad. Beyond good and bad. As if my house burns, it's just an event. An outside world report that my senses gave. But if I think my house was burned, It's an interpretation that I've done on that event myself. It's just a positivity and I don't have to believe it. Maybe I don't believe it is a beater for me. Meaning does not occur in things or events. The profit is in the pilings that we paste on them. That's why we keep strong control over our response so that our minds don't get wrong thinking. Discipline of second discipline, i.e., action. Our relationships with other people. There is a social being for others like Marcus. It's time to speak, as in 5.168.599.1. Every man has a part of the people and the ability to use him, and that is what makes us different from other animals. But perhaps it would be better to say that we are a participant of the people, which is also a process and a substance. Marcus has compiled many times the people's rolled world from a city that every human being is citizen, and the duties that come along with citizens are all to play. Man is a part of nature and is our firm that we exempt nature's demands. Live as nature recorders. As Marcus always spoke, in order to do this, we must make the right use of our people, and the roles that we have got into the cosmic plan should be completed in the best way. This means not only to be silently adapted but with the active world, to cooperate with your luck and with the most other human beings. Marcus repeatedly says, we have not been created for ourselves, for others. Our nature is truly selfless. In our relationship with others, we must think of their Savior and with them in a fair and justice manner. Marcus never clearly defines what it means from justice. But it is important to understand what this word means is not more of this justice. Every person has a part of the people, people's religion. Every person has a part of the people, and everybody has a role in this large design of the world. But this does not mean that all humans are equal or their roles are similar to one. More people like Marcus looked at the society as a hierarchy, and it appears in their language. Human society is like an organism such as a body or a tree, but the trunk of the tree does not resemble the Lewis, and the hands and feet cannot confuse with the head. To act just means justice. It doesn't mean that it's not to treat all. This means treating their borders as they disguise. And this is the idea of the derives from their position. Where is the place in that hierarchy? The focus of Stoicism is to be an order and system in the society in the same way on the orders and the harmony of the universe. This idea upper class suits Romans considerably, because they didn't have to ask uncomfortable questions on the structure of their society. Discipline of third discipline, i.e., will. This is the apostle of a discipline with one way of action. Discipline of action occurs for things that happen in our control. We do. Will's discipline is for things that are not in our control. Who is with us? Whether someone else has done or nature. We control our functions and are responsible. We harm ourselves if we do something wrong, but not others and people. On the other hand, things that are outside of our control do not have the power to harm us. If a man does something bad like a flasher, theft, or the crime, he beats himself. Not to victim. The actions of the nature, such as fire, illness, or death, only if we cherish them. When we do this, we stock on people's goodness and care, and in this way we show under our own people. This work should not be done at all. We should look for things like this. The discipline works here and should be exempted. Discipline of will by using, or as the Epictetus says and quote Marcus, the art of excellence. If we understand that every event people have already thought out, Dharma, wreath, the rule, nature, and everything else is part of his plan, and the plan is always good as it should be. So, whatsoever we have written in our luck, whether it's bad to exhibit, just as poet Alexander Pope said, the same is okay. This applies to everything like obstacle and every bad luck, and especially on the death. A process that we can't stop, which doesn't harm us, and what we should do with the joy of understanding the part of the nature. The three discipline, which is perfection, action, and will, together create a complete life system. Mix and form all around them. It is written very clearly, Every moment you have this option in Medits 7.54. Accept this event with humility, i.e., will, with this human being, as they should do with them, action. Approach this dot carefully so that some ires do not get into it, i.e., option. The same beans meet 3 points in a slightly different order. In the Meditations 9.6, the objective judgment, unselfish action, willing accepts of all external events. And get a solid version in the Meditations 8.7. Progress for the Rashtriya mind means not to accept lies or dots in their perception. Embracing selflessness in your acres. Just want things or don't want what you have in control and apprehending the nature you want. A leaf tree is part of the same nature. There are plenty of entries. Each shows that it is the center of Marcus's thought, and the main regeneration of writing Meditations is the same. People to Marcus and Aurelius often see as a perfect Stoic. But there is only one clear session of Stoicism in Meditations 5.10. He also has a distance tones as it is just another school. All the rest, like Aurelius' big names, are not found here. Na is the name of Gino. Chrysippus is also named twice. Once in 6.42 as a small coat, and once Marcus put him in the list of those with Socrates and Epictetus that have died in 7.1 line. This doesn't mean Marcus's thought Stoic wasn't, or that they did not have the effect of late Stoic specialty Epictetus. Stoicism fits the best if they have to connect to a school. But if asked him what you're reading, he probably says philosophy. No surprise. In the Roman period of that time, the style of philosophy was similar. When the schools such as Platonists, Perpetrators, Cynics, and Stoa pay attention to their common points over their defenses. Marcus wasn't all the Stoic who considered the important in his thought, as the veterans that were perpetitive. Others, like Seneca and Epictetus, also accept the basic idea of Stoicism. But to take quotes, stories, and arguments from other schools without hesitation. Meditations also do. Stock remains on the base. But the rest of the philosophy has taken significantly influence. Marcus was the most important in the old thinkers quoted by Socrates, i.e., Socrates, Athens' elder thinker who took the focus of philosophy from the physical world and shifted to the morality of the human being and his role in the society. Socrates wrote nothing. Their teachings get through the dialogue of their student Plato. Marcus has quoted Plato many places in the special book Intake and also found Socratic or Platonic ideas and places. An exam is a Socratic paradox that states that no human being does not work wrong with life. And if a person has the right and wrong clear knowledge, he will always be right. Marx say about the other people that they are such as they do not know the difference of good and evil. 2.1 in and this little one repeats even more. The character of Socrates was the same as the important as his teachings. Their gender strength and self-control made them a perfect exam for a Stoic journey or for any visit. He never compromised with his philosophical belief, and he gave his life when he had mischarge on them at the age of 70. In the days before their anxiety and examining in the trial, heavier was so that people easily assumed the first version of the first-century Stoic martyrs such as Japetus or Helvidius Priscus. Marcus has also remembered Socrates in the same light in Meditation 7.66. The first thinkers of Socrates called pre-Socratic. They were the most important for both Marcus and Stoa. Heraclitus, a mystery thinker who was in Ephesus, today's Turkey, whose genomes were short sentences famous, deep also and condensing. The central role was given to both peoples and fires in the system of Heraclitus. The two things were natural for Stoa, and maybe they had an influence of Heraclitus. The name of Heraclitus comes from 4.466.47 in Meditations. But their ideas are even hidden in multiple entries. Their short and striking style also appears in some lines of Marcus. Just as the best revenge is that you don't become the same in 6.6. The weight of the fence is raised. Then put it. The weight of the boxer is inside them in 12.9. Marcus's most powerful theme comes from Heraclitus. Constant change of time and matter. Heraclitus said we can't land twice in the same river. And Marcus furthered that little. Time is a river. The fast-flowing current of events appears once and goes. Then the second comes and he also goes. 4.43 and 2.17 and 6.15. The most impacted pre-Socratic on Heraclitus Marcus. But some other thinkers also see the influence Marcus has used to place image with a perfect round sol of poet Empedocles. Book at section 41 i.e. 8.41 and 12.3 and once the mystical idea of Pythagorean has also been born. 11.27 in. Some entries also seem to be inspired from the dot of Democrats. The Democritus had created the atom theory which later inspired the Epicurus. Heraclitus made a school by Socrates. School building was the work of Plato, and then his student Aristotle created Peripatetic school with his different ideas. Marx Aristotle's name never takes but a little bit of his follower Theophrastus he's quoted in 2.10. Perhaps even the Institute was the Cynic school of the 4th century BC in which the first and foremost femmes were the Gaucher's disease of synep. A proprietor shared a tud instead of doctrine. His focus was to give the rest of the society and live the close life of nature. The Daplanese set an image of the philo travel, a poor and simple man. Marcus has referring to the undressed visit in Meditations 4.30, which is probably a snick. He was the fame's claim that he is the citizen of the whole world. This is a part of Stoics' world age a city-based idea. Marcus has also recalled another Cynic Crates in 2.15 of his student Monimus and in many places named Daplanese. In a story in Meditation 6.13, which is not clear now, Marcus's relationship with Epicureanism that was the largest rival of Stoicism. Hellenistic philosophy had a considerable condensing. Epicures that were from 341 to 270 BC. These followers were built in a universe that was completely different from the world of Geno and Christ's. The world perfectly ordered of Stoa, but there is a universe random for Epicureans. Result to get random of atoms. It is worthless to talk about providence in such a world and the Epicurus even though the dog's existence is considered but he said that they have no interest in human life. The Epicurean round simpel for humans was life as good as possible. Enjoy as many as the plaques can be found and stay as far as possible from pain and tension. There should be no fear about the specialty death as the death is just the breakdown of the atoms. This process is not just a punch but also a heartless. Because after death we don't feel the pain. There were many instant Roman followers of this sect, but still it was not as successful as the Stoicism. And the most people took it a little lightly ignored. The idea of the quiet life of the Epicureans did not match the value of the active public life of the Romans. And making the plaque of good to the placker was awkward to the conservative Romans. Eat, drink. The popular image of the Epicurus, but the truth was that the Epicurus himself had clarified that the plaque means deep thinking, not just eating or angling sex. Yet the Epicureanism was the only real rival of Stoicism even after a short sect, because they also had a full system to understand the universe. So Marcus many places show this contrast directly by speaking providence or atoms 4.3, 10.6, 11.18, and 12.14. Marcus usually did not like Epicureanism, as there is an expected. In Meditation 6.10 he disassembles the Epicurean universe from mixture, interaction, dispersal and the Stoic system from unity, order, design and clearly Stoic side. Another place he asks, should we be afraid of death? When Ivan Epicureans take him lightly. 12.34 in. But some entries show that Marcus's etude was never so negative. Marcus has coded and impregnated the time of illness of the Epicurus in a place. In 9.41 and 2 places have been conferred with their pen endurance. in 7.33 and 7.64. As the second let's-toi like Seneca, Marcus was also ready to extract the truth from where he found. So far we were focusing on the content of Meditations, the ethical system of lay Stoicism that also mixes a little Platonic and Heraclitus, and sometimes also refers to other thinkers and schools. But now the question of what is Meditations itself? Why was it written? Who was the audience? What type of book is it? In order to answer these questions, we have to check out the content and look forward to the form and their origin. I think the Marcus is quite surprised, perhaps a little shock even if he found that his name came to the modern library of the world's best books. They are first surprised at the title of that book. English title Meditation is not just original but also misleading. It seems like it's a serious and Attic book, while it's just a collection of random notes. The Greek manuscript was used to print for the first time that was quite far from writing the original of Marcus. They had the name of this book to himself. It was also probably not the original title, but at least it seems to be a bit better than the nature of this book. It's really that Marcus is probably not given any title to this book. The simple reason is that he never thought it as a proper full book. It wasn't written to be punished, and Marx clearly didn't expect it to read any more. It contains people and events that were unclear even for time readers like us. Some of the Meditations 8.25 or 12.27 could probably recognize their time people, but no one assumed what Rusticus wrote from Sunsa. 1.7 or Antoninus uttered customs officers in Tusculum. 1.16 or what happened in Quetta with Marcus. 1.17 Someplace Marx also think the directory on the roll of their aperture. There were no other things. He thinks about the denier of being an imperialized. In 6.30 the Senate gives the reminder of the simples speak in 8.30 and reflect on his unique position in 11.7. All of these entries are clear that the text's use is not a general reader but Marx's own. As he wrote, "When you look at yourself, remember an error in 10.31. Now the question is what we put the Meditations in the category. It is not diary, not at least in normal sense. It was not written about the daily life of Marcus. No people's names, no dates, and just two places. There is no sense of the reader, just like usually is in diaries. Some scholars say maybe this is a rough draft of a large book, as Pascal's Panties or Joseph Jobert's notebooks. But the notes of Meditations are so receptive and simple that it does not fit the theory. It probably matches a little more than the note of a working journey, as from the jail of Wittgenstein or the Cahier of Simon Weil. But here is a big defense. The Meditations do not seem experiential or open-ended, and nothing seems to be original. It seems like a man is repeatedly repeating the old idea as he did not fully absorb. Perhaps the best description of these entries was given by the French scholar Pierre Adamt. Their wordings are the visual exercises that Marx wrote to handle their daily stress and confectioners. A self-help book in the realist sense. This point is clear even from an entry. Marcus reminiscent himself in Medits 5.9. Don't look like a teacher to philosophy. Give him such a look as a cold leaf or convert cream for the eyes. It was not written to record the dots of the entry marks and not to enlighten others. It was just for his own use in which he could practice and strengthen his philosophy. There are many things to understand when it comes to an angle that seemed to be the first condensing, just as the text should use the negative mood. Don't forget, thinking. It's not just to push or reflex but to push. And it is exchanging that any reader already notices. Returning again and again on the same price. This entry does not give new senses, just redeem old ages into new ones. Perhaps it was best to reap and speak in a new way, understanding that the entries of the meditation are also a process, not just product. This expelling why this book looks so random and disordered. We don't know who unregistered books of meditations or on which basis. May be order chronological, be a little too or at all random. The assignment of the individual entry marks may be of itself or not, but it seems that it would have left the Marcus. Because if there is a letter editor, then perhaps he or she tries to group the entries with the similar topics or tie the loose ends. And we may not always be asylum where an entry starts and where to finish. Many places were probably not clear. Book 1 is a special place as it seems different from the rest of the book. He is a little autobiographical and the structure of the proper thinking understanding appears in it. It has 17 entries, where Marcus remembers those who learned something in life, directly or from their exams. Entries follow the sequence of early life of Marcus. First their older relatives, then teachers, then their adaptive father Antoninus and the gods in end. The rise of the size of this logical order and entries seems to be that it was done by the ordered life Dolly Marcus. If this is true, at least the book 1 will have thought of Marcus as a supplement unit. Scholars believe, and maybe the right is that the small sketch of Antoninus emulsion in the book 6.30 was probably the starting point of the long memoir 1.16 of the book 1. So this part can be written later. It is difficult to find any clear unity or development in the rest of the books. Wherever you open a page of meditations, except book 1, the same beings' voices are the same beings' topic. Marcus's thoughts do not change from one book to another book. No special structure appears inside an invisual book. The most plausible sounds that the division between books is just physical, i.e., Papyrus roll of original scrolls or any of their copy filled a roll, then the new roll was started. If the tone of the books is similar, the form of visual entries is quite different. Some entries seem like short fortissimo in which a philosophical point is reported. In the book 2 and 3, there are more such exams. There are some simple commands such as take the shortest route or short surings that like no one can funnel you from living in harmony with yourself. Sometimes Marcus make a list, like remar dat and dat and dat. Sometimes he gives an analogy, but what is the connection is to understand the reader, just as there is a lot of incest act on human life altar. 4.15 or a stone thrown in the sky. 9.17 Sometimes he also performs clearly. Have you ever seen chopped hands or feet? We do with ourselves when we fight against what is happening. 8.34 In. Sometimes entries seem like a meditative exercise, as Marcus tells itself that imagine Vespasian's time. In 4.32 or in August, imagine the court of August 8.31 and then cover the scene with your time. Some of the book 3 and 11 parts are just cuts. Some entries seem rough drafts. As the treasury coats of book intake later polished oak meditations came in 11.6. Some notes mean absolutely unclear. As the character dark womanish abstain at 4.28 or they do not know how many things are hidden in stealing, sewing, bailing. 3.15 In. What does it mean? Critiques are also not able to understand. The style of entries is different. Some entries are just personal reminders of Marcus, just as the philosophy version of Tust is to call the doctor. But some entries seem quite literary. Marcus took training in the rhetoric techniques of 2nd century, so when he writes for himself, his writings were taken up in the same style. In small entries often the interest of the word play appears and also try to write a short deep line that reminiscent the smartness of the rhetorical schools on one side and on the other hand to the deep and compressed style of Heraclitus. Does the sun ever rain work or Asclepius Demeter? Evil the same old thing. Don't want to be a wrestler. Use it without vanity and let it go without any difference. Sometimes meditations also get a little dialogue type feel, just as short lost conversations. This idea can come from the philosophy trade. Real dialogues started with idea Plato, and Aristotle followed it in his Lost Walks and Cicero. There are no dialogues with a proper scene setting in the meditation, but in some entries, It seems like Marcus is converging between two voices in his own mind. The first voice is a bit confused, emotional, human side of Marcus. The second voice is cool, the voice of the philosophy that performs or explains before. Long entries that are not too long. A little structured style is written, but sometimes a little forceful looks. Don't like the way to write, all critics marks. Some say their Greek language was weak, but perhaps the problem was not the language but the style of writing was raw. Marcus' ideas were thinking, struggling to express. Marcus is a habit developed because of this. He uses two similar words of beans piling. As they don't be sure the first word was right. It becomes difficult to read for the English reader when it is combined with the abstract philosophy, because short and clear words are inferred in English. But when Marcus's writing is at the best, he becomes very powerful, specialty when image and idea balance is formed. Just as at the start of 5.23 he writes, "Remember how fast things go, which are right now and who are going to come. Life is flowing like a river. What is changing? Because there are thousand versions. Nothing is stable. You are not in front of you. The infinite gap of the past and future is in front of you. A deep ditch whose end is not visible. The theme that is to be temporary of life is changing the constantly of the world." It is a main theme of the Meditations, and we will further see that the treatment of this topic is not just from the philosophy but also from the literature and its nature of Marcus. If one tries to find a full clear order from the Meditations, he will be the effort vest. It is not a book of type, as if someone links to the revolt of Avidius Cesis to 9.42, he or she will fail if 10.4 is commended on the Commodus, because these entries are difficult to tell the express time. But this does not mean that there is no unite in the Meditations or no link to the life of Marcus. Both are. The thing that connects this book is some of the selected themes that are repeatedly repainted and show Marx's own thoughts and struggles. As many times Marx come back to a topic, the time suggests how much it is for them. The most oblivious theme that every reader will notice is to be the temporary of death and human life. Marx repeatedly remind themselves that the death should not be afraid. This is a natural process and is part of the constant change of the world. Sometimes he see the death as a comfort. You will die quickly, Marx say several times from themselves, and then nothing will be matter. In 4.6, in 7.22 and in 8.2. He constantly highlights the nature of every aspect of life. Everything changes, everything ends, everything is forgotten. This is the reason of many thought exercises that Marx give themselves. Thinking about the court of Augustus. Imagine the deposit of Vesperian or treason in 8.31. 4.32 Thinking about the old philologues in 6.47 and then say now all is left in ash and memories. This theme is not just limited to Stoicism. In the old literature, it comes everywhere. Marx's own Eliade's book is a 6-part coat in which human life has been fed with leaves. The leaves that grow in spring make a little time flourish, then fall dead and replace with new leaves. In 10.34 Marcus also gets into this bean filling and writers such as the Greek poet Mimnermus that even pushed the Homer's contribution even further, or Roman war Servius Sulpicius who wrote his friend Cicero on his daughter's death. I want to share a thing with you that was going to give me a little comfort. You can help. When I was returning from Asia, I saw the places we were crossing from Aegina. Aegina was behind the Megara front. In the Corinth left side and the Pierre right side all the city was ever very famous, and now we have fallen, broken, and I thought, hey, and you serious can't control what you're suffering too, and remember that you are humans who have been born to die a day. Let's think that I was going to pay a lot. Today's grief counselors probably don't focus on such a view, but Marcus understood that perfectly, and for them it is quite pious. Marcus was Stoic, but he was also a Roman. Not only influence from Gino and Chrysippus, but also from Homer and Virgil. The name of the Virgil does not come in the Meditations. and in books written in Greek language, it was also difficult to quote them. But there is a sadly filled tone in Meditations that is clearly Virginia. Some other things are also repeated surfaces. Many entries are focused on pain, body health, and ways to deal with it. Many entries begin from the word when you have difficulty in getting from beds. 5.18.128. There is a constant theme: controlling anger or irration towards other people, tolerate their waste or bad behavior, and show them their mistakes. Many entries are focused on the frescoes of court life. Mostly when Marcus tells himself that stop complicating in 8.9. He confers the court and the philosophy. Like stepmother and real mother, steps meet for duty from mother, but love does not do it. 6.12 in. Yet the court is no blockage. He can be a challenge, even a chance. Good life can go anywhere. Also in the court, as Antoninus showed. He wrote in 5.16 and 1.16. Marcus tells himself no role is so perfect for the philosophy as it is written in the role in which you are. 11.7. An all clue of the personality of Marcus meets their image. In meditation, the images of nature come very often in meditation. Many readers are Meditations from 3.2. In which Marcus natures bread bake or fix, disassemble olives and vet, as the nature works without thinking. And many entries get the scenes of nature and farming, processes such as sheep's, herds, grapes, harvesting and regulating. Probably this was the eggementals common, but common eggementals also show a lot inside the human being. If you read any of the books of Plato, you can find people like helpsmen, doctors, shoemakers on every page. This people get very little in writing. Marcus is a strong image, as a tree in which every human being is a branch. This is the Stoic idea, but Marcus explores this image and deeply. He writes, you can see the defense of a branch that has grown with the tree and the branch that has been cut back. It shows the love of Marcus for nature. But its atrophy is also a strong sense of disgust for human life and second humans that do not have ugly explanation from Stoicism. As scholar P.A. Brent says, Marcus's refuge says the world is perfect, but the world seems to be bad at all. The people who were in the court were fakes and flattering, and those who deal with Marcus Deli were meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jails and rod. Meditations have a repeating point. Human beings are social animals, as Marcus is repeatedly reminded of himself. He writes, God takes care of humus, and you do not care about the other humus even when you yourself are on the edge of the death. This entire book keeps the feel of a strong pessimism. Everything that we want in life is empty, useless, short. Dogs are barking on each other. Children are fighting. The first are laughing, then are crying in a second. Trust, Shem, justice, truth have disappeared from the world. Just saved in heaven. So why are you still here? 5.33 He wrote. Then many entries look dirty visuals. Marcus to the world disassemble like a public bath, oil, sweat, dirt, yellow, water drain, everything. 8.24 writes in it, when Marcus stars see, just because she can wash down life's sludge. 7.47 And he wrote so. Those who value objective thinking Marx so much sometimes become a cynical in the modern sense. What are the things that are made when disgusted? Liquid, dust, bones, dirt or marble is a type of solid dirt. Gold and silver have some saved garbage. The clothes are made of hair only. Purple dye is the blood of a shellfish and the rest are the same. 9.36 The body of the human beings is also the meat suffixed in just a bag for Marcus. 8.38 In this word he hates his flesh. There is a mixture of blood, bones, fragments and nerves, bases, arteries collection. Perhaps the most said entry is exactly where Marcus recommends to be indefinite even for music. In 11.2, a scholar has written Meditations can bring long-term reading sadness. And the people who like this book can't even dictate that Mark's philosophy shows human life quite dry. Matthew Arnold, who wrote on Marcus and response his philosophy deeply, he told the main weakness of this thought system. There is no place for happiness in it, and it seems right too. Marcus does not tell us how to get happiness, just tell how to make a pen. The Stoicism of meditations is a defensive philosophy, protecting. The military images are repeated. Sol is called posted or station. Mind is uttered an invisible fortress. 8.48 in. This image is not just limited to Marcus, but for them probably kept much more mincing, because their last life passed in the battlefield and a distant journey. Life for Marcus was a war, and often they would feel like the war that is always being fought to lose. Yet there are some places where a slightly different mood of Marcus is visible, specialty when she referring to gods. God or gods are the same thing from the Stoic point of view. These are things like term bus people, nature, providence, and so on. Marcus also says it will be a divine power good because the divine is. But he also adapts to the stritones of this power, just as the Stoic was the rowel of the thought. What is the point of prayer? When do not change the disease of gods. Marks themselves too many places do this positivity that it is probably not working to pretend. In 5.7, in 6.44 and in 9.40. That's why it seems to be ignoring when Marcus offers a personal care for gods in some place. The most clear appears in the end of the book 1. Marx writes that gods through their help, their insights as they did and people. Their help looks quite spatial. Marcus speaks to them for treatment given through dreams, including dream that came to Kata. He reminds that gods also help other people like you. Dream sign in every possible way in. Marcus's writing seems he build in the genuinely gods, not just as metaphor but real force. When he responds to those who stalk when they go to gods, say I know there are gods because I have repeatedly felt their power. Now the question is how does it fit from a personal connection design? In the concept of the impersonal people of Stoa. Perhaps the answer is found in a dialogue of Medits 9.40. But this is the things that gods left me. A voice says and the other voice responds to what you think does not matter the gods from your decision? Probably Marcus did not explain to this conflict himself or did not exempt the conscious. But the being of this contrast shows that in the deep somewhere inside them they also felt that the sphere of Stoicism was not perfect for everything. Nobody knows who or how it was used. Historia, written in the end of the 4th century, shows a scene of Augustus Marcus, where he is giving lectures in the room on the meditations and the audience is lost in his magic. This is one of the typical lies of this book. A good sea story, but fully created. But the money shows that the meditations were being circular until the 4th century, because Order Themistius had also tested it. Perhaps it was also known as a contemporary Julian the Apostate neo-pagan emperor of Themistius. Marx in their dialogue the Casarage have been shown as an ideal philo-travel king, as Julian wanted to be himself. Everything fell in the West in the century after the Themistius and Julian. Also the knowledge of political systems and Greek language. The Marcus's book for the next 1,000 years disappeared for the people of the West of Homer and Euripides. In the Greek-speaking East, the copies of the Meditations were surveyed, but the people did not read it much. There are no traces to many centuries. Then the 10th century receives a letter in the beginning of a scholar and the churchman of Ates in which he writes that I have a copy of a very valuable book of Aber Marcus from a while. It was not just old but completely broken. I have copied this so that the future generations can get a good version. That's the copy of the Atheros. Today we have the regeneration of the Meditations. It is not a condenser, but after them the readers began to grow. A large Byzancyclopedia of the name Suda after 1 or 2 generation quotes it. Perhaps around the same time an Byzantine poet wrote a small poem on it that is copied with text. On the Book of Marcus. If you want control over the pen, open this book and read carefully and get into it. You have the knowledge of the world and life at the time of full, which is happening and which will come, and understand that happiness and gum are just an empty smoke. In 1453, when the Constantinople went to the arm of the Turks, a lot of scholars fled to the West. With the Greek text from which Italian Renson got energy. Meditations will also be one of them. But this book was barely saved. It's just a completing manuscript saved. A codex of the 14th century, which is placed in the Vatican with the arrows itself. For the first time it came to print in 1559, when Wilhelm Zellander blew text from a better manuscript. The manuscript was not surveyed by the time of today, but even then the version was quite indirect from Marcus's real writing. Some of the money we read today are badly distorted. Either they have instant words missing or the line has been resolved. Some of the mistakes marks have been in the original notes, and some mistakes will come in the process of copying that lasting for 1,000 years. Some places scholars have tried to make the original version back from their knowledge and guess and have been successful at times. But there are still some parts that have been stocked on pilings. Meditations never pulled too much interest of the classic men's experts, and it's not difficult to understand the regeneration. The direct mention of history events is low and not much content for social history. If it comes to proof about stasis, meditations look absolutely light in front of the discourses of the Epictetus. But despite this book has always been stuck to those who are outside the small circles of the classical studies. Perhaps the more they can understand the struggles of Marx well. Meditation was one of the favorite books of Frederick the Great. A recent American president also spoke that he reads it again in every few years. The book also distracted many poets like Pope, Goethe, Arnold, and also Southner planter William Alexander Percy. Every person he wrote in his autobiography, whether there is a deeper defeat. Marcus Aurelius have a kingdom that can never break. He does not go out inside, and when everything goes he still remains. We won't live in the world of Marcus, but that's not as different as we ever think. The best proof of this is the Russian poet Joseph Brodsky's Homes to Marcus Aurelius, in which he begins his journey with his statues on the Capitoline Hill of Rome. I saw him last time a few years ago. A single winter at night with an alone wandering Delemian. I was visiting my hotel from a taxi. After the night that was one of the worst nights of my life. The next day morning I had to go from Rome. I was drunk. Traffic was running like people want for their futures. Below Capitol I uttered the driver to stop. Given money and landed. I am not alone. The Dalmian of a medium size came from somewhere and came to me and sat quietly. It was so conferring that I felt for a moment I could offer a cigarette. For a while we saw both that horseman's statues, and suddenly hardly everything bleed because of the rain and the rhythm of the pillars and arces of Michelangelo. The bright stat between the blur that had no perfect shape. It seemed like he was moving. Not very fast. And there was no other place. But so was that Dalmian rose from me, and that the bronze walked behind the movement of statue. Welcome to Good Read Self-Growth channel. Let's now try to understand this book, Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, from the line-by-line page. Book 1. I learned to keep good characters from my grandfather. Verse and just control. My father, who I saw either myself or listened to people, honesty and masculinity from them. Respect for God from my mother, giving open hearts, not just to do bad but not to think bad, and living simple life is not as rich. I learned to stay away from the public school from my parada, keep good private teachers and don't waste money. I learned to be a fan of any side from my first teacher, to escape from the street in chariot race or fighter games. Do not dictate the dictates, do your job yourself. Do not penetrate in terms of others and stay away from those who steal. I learned not to waste time in fall to things from dialignatus, magic tona, not falling into the dizziness of mantras, do not seem to be fond of things like quell fighting, whether to hear the truth or not come, read philosophy, learn from the child, then write dialogues as a student from Tendensis and Marcinus, sucking Greek style, staying in camp bed and a sheet. I learned from the rustics to understand that it is necessary to train and discipline your character, to take the interest in the rhetoric, not to wander, not to write on the fault to abstract topics or not to give the malus to others or write something that the face symmetry or a person living for others to show me. Stay away from speech, poetry, and fancy writing, just not to wear fancy clothes for walking indoors, writing simples and straight letters like he wrote my mother with sh vashasha. And if there is no anger to be patched up later. I've learned to live with my urge from the apologists and stay reliable all the time. Just pay attention to the people, whether the moment is small or bigger. Staying beans in every session, whether there is a lot of pain, your baby's death, or any illness. From their exams, it came to clear that a man can be both strong and flexible. Seeing professions in their tackings and seeing that they considered their knowledge and skill as a teacher as a humble virtue, and learning how to help with friends, without losing self-respect or ungraceful. I learned to be kind of sex, to be a father in the house such as the authority one, to become an agsible, how to live a nature's award. He showed, without being serious, showing ego, having a natural sympathy for friends, showing tolerance for those with buzzers and weak thinking, to adjust well with everyone, to meet them was a great compliment and to live around them was an honor for people. Understanding and analyzing the logical and sensible, not showing anger or other emotions openly, staying free of money, but being filled with love, without having to starve the noise, sharing your knowledge without showing. I learned from literary critic Alexander. It's wrong to keep improving people's mistakes at all times. When you make a small mistake in grammar or pronunciation, just respond to their question or give another exam or talk to the issue, not to speak on their wording or something that pushed the discussion, and put the right word quietly in the middle. I learned from the fronto to understand how jealousy, clevers and pretends with power and how people of good minds sometimes become very ruthless. I learned from the Alexander the Platonist. Every time people say or write that I am busy until I am really busy, it should be used. In the same way, I am busy speaking, it is not right to escape from the responsibility from people around you. I learned from Catullus. If a friend is angry, no matter why it is wrong, do not ignore him, but try to fix things. I learned to give my teachers a responsive without irritation, such as Domitus and Athenodotus in the story, and love your children with a true heart. I learned to love my family from my siblings, to value the truth and comfort. His through showed me about Thrasea, Haladius, Cato, Diane, and Brutus. And there was an image of a society where everyone has a being, everyone is equal to speaking, and where the children give the most value to the freedom of their people. And they also learned how to value the philosophy of constantly and onestly. Helping others, sharing joyfully, always staying away from negative thinking, never stout on the love of your friends. And when he did not like anything, the front one was clear. His friends never had to admit what they think about. Everything was always clear. I learned the ability to avoid self-control and distribution from Maximus, staying in a difficult period of time, especially when sick, both balanced personality, dignity, and grace together, without having to do my job. The other people believed that everything he said was to think, and who did without an enemy. Never be shocked, never feared, neither in a hurry, nor in the condensation, nor tempting, nor fighting unnecessarily from anyone. Great heart, kindness and sincerity. It seemed that he himself walks on his way, no one forces them. They never felt small and never felt that someone is bigger than them. There was also a little sense of humor in them. I learned to be kinder with my father, when a decision is reached, to follow him in a 50 way, to ignore the show of the counters, to work harder and persistently, to listen carefully to anyone who spoke a few valuables for public good, to treat every human being worth them without tired, when to pressure on what and when it is retreated, to close things that run behind the young boy, selfless thinking, not extinguishing with his friends that he enters them on the dinner or travel with them until he himself is not. And for someone who was left behind for a work when he came back, all of them would be the same. Asking tough questions in meetings, staying focused, never before being protected from impressions. Quickly eliminating the conversation, loyalty with your friends, never bore them, nor treating anyone, always relying on yourself and being cheerful, planning in advance, and also taking quickly care of small things, controlling the attendance of taking your compliments or rapports, always prioritizing the advantages of ampere, correcting public money, taking responsibility, and even taking a blemish if the mistake is made. Respect for gods but not superstition, direct heavier with human beings, neither acting to become a hero of the public, nor trying to take care of them, not always accompanied by serious, stable and never rip or fleeing behind fashion, enjoying without vanity and forgiveness that the comfort life gave. If you got it, if not found, it did not feel the lack of it. Someone never said he is a fake, he is a shamer or a boring teacher. Everyone saw him as if he is a man who has turned out to the test of life, which does not pretend but has leadership and self-control. For those who follow the philosophy seriously was responsive in their heart. Ignore those who were a fake. He could live comfortably with everyone and did not force the front to the fore. Known how to take care of yourself, neither oversized nor oversourcing your looks, but did not even do the whole. This is why they never need a doctor, medication, or lotion. The most important thing that a suspect had an expert, whether it's a law, speaking, or a mind mater, is to put forward the expert and support the whole energy to give it its best. The trades were responsive, but they didn't keep speaking that I'm saving values. And I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed to thee. Some place, some stick in work. Even after migraine, fresh and focused. They had 2 little crates, just were state crates and not even more. He always put the public work in control. Games, buildings, money sharing, everything just need not to earn name. Neither at a strange time, nor to create fancy buildings for yourself, neither worry about food, nor of clothing color and design, nor the demand of beautiful slaves. As Lorium's form sheet, Linovium's simple things, except the apology of a custom officer in Tusculum. Like all the exams, he never missed, never lost control over him. Someone never saw them sweating. Every work done with logical and attentiveness, but with strong decision and without any confusion. It can be said about them as for Socrates, saying that they were also aware of angling and left if needed. The things that people do not leave or the people who are stuck. Both their strengths, professions, and controls were equal in things. It shows that their soul was ready, never losing. I learned from the gods that I found good grandparents, good mother-in-laws, got a good sister, got good teachers, got good presentations, relatives, friends. Almost all were good. And I never lost the control from my top with them. While the inside could do so and could be easily. Thank God on. I have never been put in that resolution. So the test escaped. That I didn't find the girlfriend of the grandfather for much time, that I didn't lose my virginity quickly and came up to adulthood, even slightly deeing when I had to come, that I found it as a ruler and as a father who prevented me from being an arrogant and explained that even staying in the court you can live without bodyguards flock, expensive clothes, big glashing or sculptures, showing careless without having a ruler. That my brother was like it. His character inspired me to become my better version. His love and vision made my life look more. That my baby was born uncontrollable, neither his body was worse. That I wasn't more talented in rhetoric or poetry or other fields. If I think I'm approaching them well, I don't have to leave them. That the people who made me bigger gave me the same responsive that he probably wanted to hurry and did not take them to say that later, because he was young. That I found people like Apollonius, Rusticus, and Maximus. I've been repeatedly and cleared how nature's according life is. God tried his gifts, help, and through the inspiration that I want to be like nature. And if I have failed, I have no fault of anyone else. Because I didn't listen to them that they taught the practically step by step. That my body works right for so much time. Given the life I live. That I never put Benedicta or Theodotes to the hand, and even later I controlled myself back even when the last took me. I never had any work done after I had been angry with the rustic that I would regret later. That my mother spent my last life with me while she went quickly. Whenever I had the mind of helping someone didn't tell me that you don't have money, and I never came into such a situation that I have to take something from someone else. That my wife is like that, obedient, loving and humble. That my children had good teachers. When I was undergoing a bloody cough or when I was dizzy and a dream came to Cotta. That when I started taking the interest in the philosophy, I didn't seem to be the hands of the wrong people, nor did I stuck in writing a treatise, nor lost in the nuances of the logic, nor dizzy of physics. These are the things that we need to help both fortune and God. Book 2. When the morning arises, say to yourself, the people I will find will be tight, vanity, false, jealous and rooked. This is because they do not know the difference of goodness and evil. But I see the beauty of goodness and the face of the ugliness of evil. And they have understood that the nature of what makes wrong is like me. Neither some blood nor some family, but some is a part of the mind and the divine in it. So no one can hurt me. No one can pull me into ugly. I may not be angry with that person or hate him. We are all born to work together, such as legs, hands, eyes, both parts of the tooth. Preventing each other is the rage of nature. Getting angry with someone, turning her mouth is all this obstruction. Whatever I am is a body, a little breath and a mind. Remove your books. Stop tangled in distractions. It's not allude. Think as you die right now and hate your body. Added mesh of a blood shell, bone fragments, nerves, veins, arteries. What is think spirit? The air, and the air that changes every moment is coming out, which is going inside again and again. And think that you are old. Now do not make the mind more slavish, do not run behind the selfish thoughts. Stop fighting the astini, do not look at the present hate, and stop doubting the future. The divine is filled with complete providence. Variety is not different from nature. Everything is connected in the same web. Everything comes from there in the scope of providence. And after them, necessity, the whole world you need to be a part of. Whatever natures or the whole nature is left is good for every part. This world is going to change in elements and in things that are formed from them. It is very important to think. Make it a Yule. Leave the thirst of books so that when you die, there is no bitterness, but with joy and truth, thank God with heart. Remember how often you have to avoid this work. How often God gave you more time, but you did not do it. Once you have to identify which world you are part of, who is running it and where do you come? And the time you have got is limited. If you did not use it to try yourself, it will go and never come back. Focus on every moment, as a Roman does. As a true man who is in front of the work, do it with complete honesty, love, happiness, and incentive. Free yourself with all the rest of the details. Yes, you can. If you do everything like this is the last work of your life. Don't worry. Don't let the emotions dominate the mind. Appearance, selfishness, angry leave all. Look how little things you need to live a peaceful and responsive life. If you are able to do this, God will not ask you anything else. Yes, let's keep yourselves down. Hey soul. But soon your self-response will be gone. Everyone gets the same life. Your life is almost over. And you have not been present by yourself so far, your happiness left on the merge of others. What are the things out there? So take a little time to learn some valuable for yourself. Don't pull on every side, but avoid another confusion. Those who work a whole life hard but without a corpus, whose every little and action does not go towards a goal, are ruining their time. No matter how hard it is, Do not pay attention to what is going on in the mind of others. It never hurts anyone. But how can you stay happy if you don't mind what's going on in your own mind? Never forget these things. What is the nature of the world? What is my own nature? How do I connect to the world? How much is my part? And that you are a part of nature. And you cannot stop that you always speak together with them and work. When people contribute to sins, Theophrastus says that the sins made from the desire are worse than the sins committed from the anger, and this is the right philosophy. Angry man turns the mouth from the regeneration due to pain and inside storm. But the man who walks from the desire is running behind the plaque. He feels more immersed, weaker, and less male than himself. Theophrastus is absolutely true that the sin from the pleasure is worth a stunt over the sin from the pen. An angry man feels like a victim that reacts from pain, and the second man jumps into the wrong work of his murder, going to the desert. You can leave life immediately, thinking about what to think about, what to say. If there are God, it is not a fearful thing to leave human beings, because God will never harm you. And if there is no God or to take them to us, then what does it mean to live in such a world where there is no God? But God is the difference of what we go on, and whatever thing we need for our real well-being is all they have given inside us. If there is something bad after death, then God has given him the way to save. How can she deliver your life if she does not harm your character? Nature never makes such a mistake, neither unaware nor compelling. It will never do that. The same kind of things go random with good and bad people. But death and life, success and failures, pain and happiness, richness and poverty are all good and bad. And there is nothing but noble, neither shameful. That's why it's good, not bad. How fast everything goes. The things of the world and their memories. And what are the things that our senses feel? What are the real natures of the people who shout proudly? How to understand the things that seem to be worthless, dirty, rotten, and dead. That's the true strength of your mind. And it's important to understand the people who believe the opinions and the voice as we FEM. And what is death? If you break down the logic, remove the false ideas created in your mind, then understand that death is just a process of nature that only children fear. This is not just a nature process but a necessary process. And how does man understand God? What part does it feel? What is the recent part when it does? It's also worth thinking. The most sold ones seem to be people who run around, continue to find things inside, research behind others' mind, and never realize that you just have to pay attention to your inside power and worship it with a whole mind. This means that you don't have to disturb it, don't make a sadhara, don't fill with an ambition, nor hate human and divine nature. His responsiveness, because he is good, loved by the human, because he is like us, and sometimes even suffering for them because he does not know what is good, what is bad. And this blindness is dangerous as black and white. Whether you take 3,000 years and live or 10 times of them, remember one thing. You are the only life you are living now, and you can live a life that you are losing. The result of both long life and short life is the same. For all that is right now, there is a being for everyone, and they are lost. And it should be clear that you are just losing a little moment. You may not lose the past. How can you lose? Remember two things. The first thing is always going on the same way and will continue again. Whether you look at them in 100 years, in 200 years, or in eternity, no matter what. The second thing that has won the longest and the quickest die is both lose the same thing, present. Because just the same they have. You can't lose what you don't have. Everything is just an impression. Monimus the cynic said, and the answer is also the obvious. But if it's right, it's quite powerful. Soul of man spoils himself. The first is the most when he begins to differentiate himself from the world, as a boil has become. Being angry with anything, it is different from the nature, and the nature itself is everything. The second one plans to turn the mouth from another person or hurt him, as the anger swells the people. The third human soul is spoiled by itself when he is defeated by happiness or pain. Fourth, when he wears the face of lies and speaks or does something fake. Fifth is when there is no antagonist of his acres and thoughts, he is just getting random. Every little thing should be for a round. And what is the round of insensible being? He is the oldest and most true law and rule. Life of human beings, there is a moment of time in it. The nature is changing all the time, the reflection is blurred, the body's recent smelling, the soul is revoked, the luck is not aware of when it comes to, the name and how long it lasts. If you look at everything, the body and their parts are a flowing river, soul is a dream and smoke, life is a rust and a journey away from the house, and which is the permanent fame is just to forget. So what is the thing that can guide us? Just philosophy, and this means keeping your inside power safe, protecting him from any attack, not letting him fall under the plaza or pen, never do anything that is random or false, and not to be a dependent on someone else's merge. Do not do anything. Accept what happens to you as you have come to yourself. And the most important, accepting the death with joy, as a thing that is just to break down the elements that the organism is formed. Why are the fears of becoming different if those elements do not have to change each other? It is absolutely natural, and the thing that is natural can never be bad.